Okay, good morning. Let's open in a word of prayer. Lord, I pray that you'll bless our time together today. Pray you'll give us wisdom, insight, and understanding as we look at some of the things that are going on in the world related to Bible prophecy. We pray that you will bless our time together in Jesus' name. Amen. Well, just so you know, so this is Let Me Fix That Map For You. This is, I think, one of the best editorial cartoons I've ever seen about President Erdogan of Turkey, who seems to be constantly redrawing the map, trying to redraw his... I think the map understates what he's trying to do. I think a lot of people think, oh, he just wants to reconstitute the Ottoman Empire. No. He's got much bigger plans than that. He'll use that as a stepping stone. I did first hour talk about Turkey and Bible prophecy and Ezekiel 38 and that type of thing. So you can get that at the FB Fellowship, at Fellowship Bible Chapel on YouTube, and Real FBC on Rumble. And then we would also like it if you would like, share, subscribe, do all those things that do to help us fight against the algorithm police. Also subscribe to the channel. I'm not that concerned about it, except that it doesn't seem like we've gotten any new subscribers for a very long time. And I'm not sure what's going on. I think I'm getting throttled by the people who consider they're my betters. Again, we talk a lot about different topics in Bible prophecy. I need to update this wheel because some of the stuff is getting, not that it's happened, it's just that there's some, I need a bigger wheel. Yeah, maybe someday I'll do a title, you're going to need a bigger wheel. That thing will be spinning like a top. So Erdogan is important. We'll talk mostly about Middle East this week. I am always kind of surprised. I have read a lot of books and posts and articles and that type of thing on Bible prophecy. And it's always interesting. Every week I find somebody with some new idea. And so my takeaway from that is be humble. Maybe you don't have it figured out. Things are unfolding at a pretty rapid pace. And so pay attention, because I think it's important that we watch, and always remember, Daniel said, he wanted to know, and he said, go your way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed till the time of the end. I think that's our time. And it says, many shall be purified, made white and refined, but the wicked shall do wickedly, and none of the wicked shall understand, but the wise shall understand. So I always say that one of the things we want to try to do is to be one of the wise guys. So I'm going to do a couple things on culture, AI. Here we go. So this is the opinion section of the New York Times this morning. And it just says, 2025 was much too much. And as I said in my sermon first hour, I said, I want to go talk to the people at the New York Times who put that together and say, in about 2 weeks into 2026, will you be longing for the good old days of 2025? Because I don't think the intensity of the things that we see are going to be rolled back at all. Now, by the way, on January 1st, going to have a sit-down talk with my friend Pete Garcia. We're going to talk about look back at 2025, look forward to 2026. So that's going to be 8 p.m. Eastern on January 1st. It'll be on, I think it's going to be on Pete's channel, also our channel at Fellowship Bible Chapel, and then wherever I stream, Facebook, Telegram, X, and wherever I can get away with. I don't want to discriminate against anybody who wants to ban me in any way. So this is the interior part of this article at the New York Times today is the year America blew up the process. And it's sort of, you see it's like a paint by number thing for the people writing the Declaration of Independence. And that's kind of significant because this year is the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. And by the way, I remember 200. And it doesn't seem like it was that long ago, right? That's, I have some friends, they were newlyweds when I was like 9 years old. And so today is their 62nd anniversary. And they always seem so much older. And now they're like a peer, you know, because we've been married 50 years and they've only been married 12 years longer. That's nothing, you know, it's very weird how your perspective changes. So also on January 14th, it's a Wednesday night, 8 p.m. Eastern, we're going to do another technology, technocracy, transhumanism roundtable, where we're going to talk about some of these issues. And by the way, when we do one of those, we'll go 2.5 hours, and we don't even begin to scratch the surface. You ought to see the stacks of stuff that I have left over that we never got to. So hopefully we're helping people navigate the area, because I think it's a very complex area. So here's Eric Schmidt. Eric Schmidt was head of, and I saw a bunch of clips of his. I don't remember which one this is, to be honest with you. He was head of Google. He's one of the big AI guys. And I saw him, he was just saying I don't think people understand what's coming in terms of AI. And I don't know how good AI is going to be in some respects, but in terms of automation, it's going to be pretty dramatic. So everything that I'm seeing is that if your job, if you can work from home, you won't have a job. Get 5 or 6 years down the road, if that long, because they'll just automate what you do. And this is troubling. I mean, what are the impacts on society, on birth rates, on marriage rates, church? I mean, how does this all fit together? And I'll be honest with you, it's very difficult to navigate and know what to do. So here's Eric Schmidt talking about himself. But remember, he wrote a big book on AI with Henry Kissinger about 3 years ago, before Kissinger went to his reward, or the beginning of it. Yeah, I'm not, well, we'll leave the Kirk Cameron opinion aside for a while, because there's plenty of people putting up videos about that. I don't need to discuss it. So here's Eric Schmidt talking at the, I think this was at the Kennedy School at Harvard recently.
When I was in high school, I was an early programmer, and I delighted in writing code. When I went to college and graduate school, that's all I ever wanted to do. I ignored all these history things and things like this. I was the definition of a nerd at the time. And everything that I did in my 20s, which got me to where I am, has now been completely automated. Every aspect of the programming that I did, every aspect of the design is now done by computers. I recently had it write a whole program for me, and I'm sitting there watching it to find the classes and the detail of the interactions and so forth as it's generating. I go like, holy crap, you know, the end of me. And I think I've been doing programming for 55 years. So to see something start and an end in front of your own life and you're still alive is really profound, I might say. Now computer science is not going away. The computer scientist will be, at least until the computer scientist gets replaced, will be supervising this. But the ability to generate code at the power that these systems can do is revolutionary. It means that each and every one of you has a supercomputer and a super programmer in your pocket. Now,
so anyway, so we're going to talk. So he's saying is like the thing I trained myself to do, it's gone away, or it's almost gone away. I saw some other AI guys talking about, I can't remember the guy. He was the guy who talked about getting the 3D, making 3D models of all of the proteins, the biological proteins. And it used to take a PhD scientist 5 years full time to do one, to map it out 3-dimensionally. They figured out how to do it, and they did I don't know how many thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of these things. They were able to do them in like 2 weeks using training AI. And so that's just an example of what's going to happen, and it's going to have huge impacts on just about everything. The world is changing rapidly. Of course, this is Middle East with Turkey. I talked about Turkey first hour. A lot of developments there. Of course, we have the war in Ukraine going on. I don't know when or if that thing's going to end. All these Russian experts were saying, oh, it's over in 2 weeks. I saw Douglas McGregor and Tucker Carlson talking about, oh, it's all going to be over, and it's not, and eventually it will be, I guess, but it's kind of interesting. It's drug on. It's almost going to be 4 years in February. So we'll see what happens. But a lot of things going on with Turkey, Syria, Middle East, all of these different relationships about things we read about in Ezekiel chapter 37 and elsewhere. Things are changing very, very rapidly. And I think that's going to be this. So I'll just make a comment on this. In Israel, there's a big controversy right now. They want to probe October 7th and figure out, okay, what happened? Why were we unable to respond very quickly? Now, having been down to the Gaza envelope a couple times recently, I can see why it looked like the response took a while. They weren't ready. They didn't have the troops there. When they say they have bases down there, it might be 25, 30, 50 people. In some cases, Hamas came in and killed everybody at the base. Well, then you got to get people in there. They got to figure out where the equipment is, where are the keys to the tank, and that sort of thing. And by the way, Hamas actually had figured out there's a kill switch in Israeli tanks. Hamas had figured out how to activate the kill switch in tanks. So they were very clever. They used a lot of AI technology, cell phone data, and that type of thing. And they overwhelmed them. And they were not these massive 50,000 person bases. Israel's doing some things. They're putting into place some different things. There are ways to deal with this, giving, and this sort of shows how warfare is changing. They're going to give helicopter pilots more, I think, autonomy on how they're going to take out somebody who's doing an attack. And it's hard, because the attacks don't necessarily come from where you expect. For example, in northern Israel yesterday, a guy came up to a bus stop, stabbed a girl, and I think she was 19 years old. She died. And then he got in his car and he ran over another person, killed them. And this is all very random because it just it happens, and then you have this big, lives changed or lives lost, and it happens so quickly. This is an article, I don't remember where I got this. Is the West over? As U.S. relations with Europe sour, longtime allies wonder if the world order will ever be the same. And my answer to that is, as I'm watching these things unfold and how they relate to Bible prophecy, the answer is it won't be the same. And it will change even more quickly than you can imagine. And it will be very, very rapid. Now, one of the theories of end-time Bible prophecy is there will be a revived Roman Empire based in Europe. A lot of people said it's European common market, that type of thing. Europe is not doing that well. It is collapsing demographically. It's being overtaken by Islam. And whatever anybody says about how long that's going to take, at least based on what I'm observing, it's going to happen much, much more quickly than anybody thinks. And it can happen here too. How are they stealing, $1 billion or billions of dollars in Minnesota? $9 billion? And there's a great journalism guy, I didn't have time to grab his video. He went out, they went to these fake childcare or healthcare centers run by Somalians, no kids, no patients, nobody, and they're cashing checks like crazy. I'm sure there's no corruption there. And this is the problem, is we're funding this. It's crazy. Yeah, somebody ought to do a fund. I don't know if they have a fund yet. Tie your investments in your fund to congressional investments of Congress, because they all seem to be getting filthy rich. Even Ilhan Omar, who doesn't strike me as being the most astute person from a financial standpoint, is getting worth a lot of money. So anyway, so one of the theories is that the European common market will rise. This was an article in the Brussels Signal today. It says the EU could be gone in 4 years. A revolutionary eruption is coming. Now, that's kind of interesting because, look, if it turns out being a revived Roman Empire in Europe, I won't be surprised. But it won't surprise me if it's not, because maybe we're not quite getting the nuances of the way the scriptures read. And when books were written a long time ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago, it looked like Russia, it looked like Europe, it looked like a European common market. And now none of that stuff is really holding up as well as everybody thought. And things have changed dramatically. And then you see the rise of Turkey. And you see this, my X feed is a constant, I don't know if they're trying to tick me off or re-educate me or what, but it is a sewer of Jew hatred all day long, every day. So I saw a post the other day, it had a picture of Gallant from Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, and someone else, and it said, do those people look Middle Eastern? And the implication was, well, they're not Middle Eastern people. They can't be Jewish. Those aren't real Jews there. Yet everybody wants to kill all the Jews that are there, but they're not real Jews. It's schizophrenic. It doesn't make any sense. So I found a picture of the model Middle Eastern family so that you could identify people from the Middle East. And here we go. That is King Hussein of Jordan, his wife, who claims to be Palestinian, and his children. And one of them is the one guy on the right there is the new crown prince. So I'm just saying is everybody wants to put everybody in these racial categories and everything. Well, you don't look like it. And this is a huge problem. There was a very good interview, and I have some problems with some of his personal things, but it was an interview on a Jewish YouTube channel with James Lindsay, who unpacked sort of the intellectual basis of the woke right. Pam and I were listening to that this morning on our way to church, and it's very, very good analysis. We have a lot of insane people who have their own YouTube channels. So let's focus mostly on the Middle East now and some of these things that are happening. Here's in response to concerns about what happened on October 7th, the Israeli Air Force unveils a unit to stop October 7th style ground invasion. More helicopters will mow down attackers on border. And now what's the reaction of the world going to be? Well, they haven't attacked anybody yet. Why are you killing them? You have to let them kill first. And I'm just telling you, the reason that it's a problem is Hamas doesn't care. Hamas intentionally set things up so that its civilians will be killed. That's a fact. In fact, maybe I should just play it now. This is Nick Freitas. Got a pretty good YouTube channel. So there's this article in Jerusalem Post the other day, Al-Aqsa flood, and it goes through a publication that Hamas put out. And the conclusion was, yeah, we read what Hamas said. It's pretty bad publication. And you can't believe any of it. For they say things like there was no rape that was committed. I've talked to people that were there at Nova in minutes after this, while this thing was unfolding. They said what they saw was absolutely shocking. So, and what says here? This is what the article says. After a reading of the entire 42-page document, which after taking repetitions into account is only about 4 slides worth of content, a few notable issues stand out. Why did Hamas feel the need to produce a document that's 42 pages long when it could have essentially been an email? Why is the production quality so poor compared to previous Hamas publications? Well, maybe because the guys who would do that that lived in luxury and gutter are not around anymore. So anyway, but they said, well, wasn't that bad? We didn't do this. It's all made up. You know, Israel was killing their own people. We weren't killing them. But the upshot of the whole publication is we'd do it again. We plan on doing it again and try to stop us from doing it again. So that's where they come from. So Nick Freitas at Young America Foundation talk the other day. He was asked a question about, well, Charlie Kirk didn't like the way Israel was responding, and they've killed a lot of people in Gaza. That's just terrible. I mean, you see Candace, you see Tucker Carlson, you see all these guys that they just go on and on and on about it. So I think this is really a very good explanation.
Now, having said that, I disagree with Charlie on some of those other statements. And again, I'm taking you at your word that Charlie said that. I don't think they were trying to ethnically cleanse Gaza. I just don't. And I don't say that because I'm generally supportive of Israel and generally not supportive of Hamas. I can't stand Hamas. But that doesn't mean that the Israeli government always gets it right. It doesn't mean that Netanyahu, it doesn't mean you have to like Netanyahu. By the same token, I know what military operations in urban terrain look like. Well, one of my biggest frustrations with this whole fight is anybody that wants to be critical of the Israeli government or Israeli combat operations, I'm fine. Let's have a conversation. Let's talk about what can be done better. That should always be. That's why we have after-action reviews in the military. But I would beg people to understand something here. Part of the reason why the combat operations in Gaza look the way they do is because Hamas benefits from civilian casualties. Hamas has deliberately made their strategy the maximization of their own casualties in order to play on Western sensibilities. Why? Because they can't beat the IDF in a conventional fight. We talk about like hospitals and mosques and schools and things like that. Do you guys want to know why? When we look at the Geneva Convention or we look at the rules of land warfare, why do we take those things off limits? Why are you not permitted to conduct military operations either in those buildings or to target those buildings for artillery and airstrikes? Because of the propensity of civilian casualties, right? They're not supposed to be military targets. What happens when your enemy makes it a military target? Am I not allowed to respond now? Wait a second. Wait. Am I not allowed to respond now? Am I not allowed to do anything? Right? What happens when I have to conduct urban military operations? And one thing I like to point out is I was a Green Beret, but I wasn't just a Green Beret. I was a Green Beret, went through Sephardic, which is our premier close quarters battle school. I went through SFAUC, which is our Special Forces Operation Urban Combat course. I went through Ranger School, Sniper School, EMT, Airborne, Air Assault, like the list goes on. The United States government spent a whole hell of a lot of money making me a pretty good combat operative. But when you're conducting operations in an urban environment, a 17-year-old that picked up an AK-47 for the first time, spraying it down a hallway kills you. It's a casualty-heavy environment. And the IDF was still going into some of these places announcing that they were coming in to do combat operations. You know they're not required to do that by the rules of land warfare or the Geneva Convention, right? And yet they did it anyways. Why? They wanted to minimize civilian casualties. So why did Hamas insist that they be there? Because they wanted to maximize civilian casualties. Why? Because every time a civilian dies in Gaza, the UN and Doctors Without Borders and CNN and MSNBC and every college campus in America goes, I can't believe what the Jews did to these poor Palestinian civilians. They're creating an impossible thing. We are rewarding Hamas for killing their own people. And Hamas doesn't care. The senior leadership could not care less. They're billionaires. So the thing that I would have said respectfully to Charlie is we can have a conversation all day long on how do we do a better job of minimizing civilian casualties when conducting combat operations. But the moment we start letting Hamas get away with what they were intentionally doing to create additional casualties so that they could beat the IDF the only way they know how, and that's by applying external pressure, then all we do is encourage that sort of behavior, not just from Hamas, but every terrorist organization.
And that's a big problem. Isaac Herzog has this tweet up about Romy Gonen's testimony. And now she was one of the hostages in Gaza. And so a lot of people say, well, there was no rape because where are the stories? Now, I would suspect that the environment in which these people were held and tortured and raped was very hostile and very difficult to deal with mentally and emotionally. And I'm saying if you're one of the persons saying that, you need to check whether you have a heart or a soul. If you're just saying, well, we don't hear the stories. So here's a story. This is a young lady. David Friedman retweeted this. Now, I don't know if it's up. I'm going to play. It's about a 3-minute clip. It's subtitled because she's speaking in Hebrew. So on Israeli Channel 12. And Friedman says she's indeed a hero for having the will to survive and recount what happened. Her captors and abusers and their supporters and excusers are beneath contempt and the lowest form of subhuman life. And of course, what was one of the responses, one of the comments to David Friedman, former ambassador's tweet? Oh, you called them subhuman. What a nasty person you are. Anyway, here it is. Only when you're in this situation can you grasp what happens to the body. And fear sometimes paralyzes. And I was paralyzed. I think not a lot went through my mind in these moments, except being terrified, really disgusted, and asking why. Why? It's the phrase I use with everybody. It's just not fair. Not fair? This was one moment in the bathroom. There was this one moment in the bathroom while everything is happening. I was crying like crazy. Were you crying while it's happening? Yes. That's what I do. I just cry. Having the time of his, and he was having the time of his life. He's ecstatic. And he has now received a gift of a lifetime. And I remember one moment looking, there was a small window like a picture frame. And I look through the window and I say, wow, the sky is blue, the birds are chirping. And that's the situation I'm in right now. I mean, the dissonance between life outside, the beautiful, the ordinary, clean life, and the filth, beastliness, and disgust that's happening here inside this bathroom. This is a moment I will never forget. Looking out and what I felt inside. This was the third time I've been in this situation. This was the lowest you can go. And when he came out of the bathroom and I went out after him, my ears were ringing. I couldn't hear anything like in the movies. I walk around and I feel that the whole world is spinning and I'm completely deaf. And all the way to the living room, my thoughts were, Romy, everyone in Israel thinks you're dead. and you're going to be his sex slave for life. And I arrive at the living room, I sit there on the armchair, and I'm like in absolute shock. Tears don't just fall from my eyes, they're pouring down. My legs were drenched from my tears. And he looks at me and he says to me, Romy, are you good? And I look at him and my head was like, you son of a, you know what? You're asking me that? You're that rude to ask me that question? And I say to myself, Romy, there's nothing you can do. This is the situation you're in, and it's the worst there is. But even in this situation, you can't dwell on the bad. You've got to get a grip, and that's what's going through my mind. And I'm lying there. And he comes to me, puts a gun to my head, and he says to me, if you tell anyone, I'm going to kill you. So, by the way, Herzog's post on that, I tried to get a copy of it, and it said not available. So that's why I grabbed the video, because I wanted to be sure you could see it in case somehow it got caught up in the X thing. Okay, so this is from pulseofisrael.com, Avi Abelah's website. Israel shocks the world with a strategic earthquake. What happened? Well, there was this thing called Somaliland that Israel recognized. And this is kind of an interesting, I've got a tweet to a Twitter thread. I'll show you part of it here in the show notes. And you should go there and read it. It's very, very long. I could read through it, but it would take us the rest of the time that I have planned for here. But so Somalia is there at the head of the Gulf of Aden leading into the Red Sea. It's a very strategically important place. Some people say 12% of the world's trade goes through there or tries to go through there, and 30% of the world's oil goes through there, and the Somali government has been very anti-West. But look at what's right across the Red Sea, the Gulf of Aden, from this new place called Somaliland. Of course, you have Djibouti, you have Ethiopia there, then you have Somalia and this new Somaliland that Israel has recognized as an independent country. I think they're the first ones to do that. And right across there is what? Yemen. And so the upshot of this is that Israel has recognized this because it's a strategic way to undermine what the Islamists want to do. They want to control that area. They want to shut down shipping. They want to make it difficult for Israel. So Israel's kind of going around behind them and saying, hey, we're going to recognize this new country. We're going to support them. We're going to give them aid. And my understanding now is Yemen, remember Yemen was showing all those rockets into Israel? Now Yemen's kind of fallen apart. So the Iranians have lost a lot of things. So here is a Clash report. Why did Israel recognize Somaliland? To expand intelligence depth and secure Red Sea access, Israel seeks a strategic foothold in the Horn of Africa. The move also reshapes regional leverage around Gaza while indirectly constraining Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi influence. And why is that? Because Turkey's been in Somalia. Other countries have been in Somalia because it's a way for them to get at Israel without attacking them directly. So Israel says, okay, two can play that game. We're going to recognize this new country. And I will tell you that the Arab world, led by Qatar, is melting down over this. They've issued statements, we condemn Israel recognizing this independent country. Okay, well, how did you guys get formed? I mean, really, why are you so special? And by the way, tomorrow, the UN Security Council will convene a special emergency session to discuss Somaliland. It sounds like something would be in a Disney movie or something like, we're going to Somaliland. And so this is so you can get Clash Report, and then this tweet I linked, Ibrahim Umayyad. It's very good analysis. He talks about why Israel recognized Somaliland, a strategic move in the Red Sea, a recognition-based strategy. Listen to this. Israel's recognition of Somaliland is not a moral gesture or a reaction to historical claims. It is a calculated geopolitical move. Here we go with the chess stuff, right? Everybody's playing chess. Aimed at securing influence over one of the world's most critical maritime corridors, the Red Sea. In contemporary geopolitics, control over operational footholds, ports, airstrips, and radar stations and intelligence platforms is far more consequential than formal treaties. Somaliland offers Israel a base to monitor shipping traffic, project intelligence, and extend operational reach across the southern Red Sea, giving Tel Aviv tangible leverage in a volatile region where maritime choke points are central to global trade and security. And to the extent that Israel could set up a base there, in Yemen, the Houthis started to decide to act up again. It's so from Yemen to Israel is like over 1,000 miles. But across that strait there, it's like 100. And you can do a lot with your fighters, your jet aircraft. Don't burn a lot of fuel. So this is very significant. And by this whole region is already exploding. Sudan is melting down. Ethiopia and Egypt are on the brink of war. Ethiopia has developed a thing called the Grand Ethiopian Renaissance Dam, GERD for short, which is giving Egypt a big case of geopolitical heartburn, the GERD dam. And the reason, because it's damming up the Nile River. Of course, when you look at a map, you'll see like a giant lake in Egypt because they dammed up the Nile River. Now somebody upstream wants to do it, but the Nile River is critical for Egypt's survival. There's also a prophecy in chapter 18 of Isaiah or Ezekiel, talking about the Tower of Silwan, or 26. It's somewhere in Isaiah or Ezekiel. Can't remember right off the top of my head. It talks about this thing, and it talks about Egypt being in big water trouble. And by the way, water is a very big deal throughout the Middle East. Who is controlling a lot of water or has the ability to make a lot of fresh water? Israel, for one, with their gas resources. Turkey controls massive amounts of water. They've cut the flow. Sorry about that. With a buttons. So my thing doesn't. Anyway, so Turkey controls a lot of water. The Euphrates and Tigris rivers flow at about 20% of what they did 50 years ago. That's causing huge problems in Iraq and Iran. And Turkey, there's a very famous Turkish leader, and the Arabs say, well, we have all that oil. And the Turkish leader said, yeah, well, drink your oil, we'll drink our water. Because they're upstream from about everybody in the Middle East. So this is a huge problem. So anyway, so it gives Israel leverage, military and intelligence foothold. It's leveraging the United Arab Emirates infrastructure, and Israel's touting this as sort of an expansion of the Abraham Accords. Why is Israel doing that? Donald Trump loves the Abraham Accords. He's not going to criticize Israel for doing anything that expands the Abraham Accords because that's wonderful. So this tweet, it goes on and on and on. It can put strategic pressure on Egypt. It also goes against Turkey's regional challenges, helps secure Israeli trade and maritime routes, reshapes Israel's regional influence. And so what a lot of analysts are looking at this, they're saying, this was a brilliant move. This is like turning a pawn into a queen at chess. That's when you can do that, that really changes the whole dynamic of everything. So that's what Israel is doing. And of course here, Saudi Arabia rejects Israeli recognition of Somaliland. Okay, thanks for letting us know, right? They're not going to do anything about it. But everybody's sort of having a meltdown. And the UN tomorrow will give a demonstration of why they're pretty much a worthless organization. By the way, Mahmoud Abbas also said bad. This is very bad. So I can pay people to murder Israelis that have murdered Israelis. I can pay them, pay for slay. By the way, he's trying to cut the benefits on that. And the people that are getting them are really upset. Remember back in the days when Franco, the dictator of Spain, was still alive, and they used to have a thing on Saturday Night Live, Franco was still dead, or Franco was still alive. Abbas has been hanging around for, you hear talk about his imminent demise for decades now. So we'll see. So this is on the Ayatollah Khamenei's website. The entire transcript of the interview of the president of Iran. And this is what he said. This is sort of the money part, and it's very, very long. You think I go long? You have no idea. It says, in my opinion, we are in a full-fledged war with America, Israel, and Europe. Now, that's kind of interesting. This is the president of Iran who says we're at war with Israel, America, and Europe. And of course, you have all the people on mega media, it's not our fight. Well, they say it is. Maybe they're planning on doing something. And so there's been all kinds of missile drills and that type of thing. Now, is Iran doing propaganda, or have they rebuilt their missile production facilities and capabilities since the war back in June? 6.5 months ago? And they're producing massive amounts of missiles, at least that's what they claim, and some intelligence indicates that this is the case, because what do they want to do? They want to shoot 1,000 or 2,000 missiles at one time at Israel, and nobody's going to be able to shoot those down. And so they're trying to cause havoc. And then Iran has the audacity to sit there and we've never attacked anybody in our history. Okay, whatever. So he says this, so we're at this war. This war is worse than Iraq's war against us, if one understands it well. This war is far more complex and difficult than that war. In the war with Iraq, the situation was clear. They fired missiles, and I also knew where to hit. Here they are besieging us from every aspect. They are putting us in difficulty and constraint, creating problems in terms of livelihood, culturally, political, and security-wise, while raising society's expectations. On the one side, they block our sales, our exchanges, our trade, and on the other, expectations in society have risen. Consequently, we must all help with our might to fix the country. Because people are pointing out things like, you don't have any water. You're out of water. Well, people are making it difficult for our people. Well, then stop messing around. It's really pretty simple. You want to live at peace? Live at peace. Stop sending, by the way, since the ceasefire with Hezbollah, Iran, through channels, has given over $1 billion to Hezbollah in Lebanon. And if you go to Palestine Square in Tehran, you see this thing, and the title of this poster is Nahariya, get ready. Another defeat awaits you in Lebanon. Nahariya is the furthest north city in Israel on the Mediterranean. We've been there. And we have friends that live there, and they said, if they ever start shooting at us directly, it's like 6-minute drive to Lebanon. A rocket's going to get here a lot quicker than 6 minutes. And then they kind of drug this out of the bank too. All these, see the missiles underground and all the missiles flying and that sort of thing. It says, are you ready? If you miss the war, we will turn your night into day. So Israel, so the big thing is going to happen this week in D.C. Netanyahu is already on his way or has already arrived in D.C. He's going to be meeting with President Trump this week, and they're going to talk about this. Israel warns it could strike Iran again. And so the Israel Hayom had big article yesterday about sovereignty. Gaza and Iran will be on the table between Trump and Netanyahu. You have, and what you're hearing is that there's this, some people have described it as a civil war within the administration about what do we do? Because Israel says Iran still threatens us. They may want our help. We don't want to help them. It's politically difficult for us. So there's a big back and forth between Israel. And it says here, Witkoff and Kushner push for rapid progress on Gaza and Iran issues. Rubio and Gasseth, on the other hand, demand the disarmament of Hamas first. Netanyahu will speak separately with the Secretary of State, whose positions inspire hope in Jerusalem. And Israel Hayom also learned this following evangelical pressure. Sovereignty in Judea and Samaria will also be raised in the meeting with Trump. And Israel just approved a whole bunch, dozens of new settlements in the areas of Judea and Samaria, in the areas that Israel has responsibility for. By the way, you persecute Jews all over the world, and they decide to leave to go back to Israel. As a result of that, the population of Israel goes up. Then what does Israel need? Well, they need more housing. Well, where do you put it? I'm telling you, Israel in October and November, it is shocking the amount of new home, Bill, you were there too, new home construction that's going on in Israel. It literally almost blows your mind. And it's everywhere you go. You see giant construction cranes. And they're doing it because people are moving to Israel because they can't live elsewhere. So there's this big disagreement. This article says Witkoff and Jared want to proceed on Gaza even without the disarming Hamas. Article also at Al Akhbar newspaper in Lebanon talking about it. Israel's mobilizing for war in Iran. There are three possible scenarios as Netanyahu seeks to grab an American green light that redraws regional rules of engagement. So this is going to be a big deal meeting this week. I think this is the 5th trip that Netanyahu has made to the U.S. since Trump took office less than a year ago for his second term. So this is the headline, front page, Israel-Iran signs of a second round, and then mobilizing for war against Iran, 3 options in Netanyahu's arsenal. Iran continues its military exercise. Preparations for war are underway. So this week, everybody's going to be down at Mar-a-Lago, getting ready for this big meeting. And everybody's going to be there. And there is literally a civil war in the Trump administration. I'm going to play a clip in a minute of my friend Dumasani Washington, who I'm trying to arrange an interview with. But here's a post about, hey, look, Team Qatar. Look at all these people. They're administration people. Look at how they're touting their relationship. So Dumasani Washington was at J-TV. I can't remember the name of the host. Dumasani is a personal friend. I spent some time with him when I was in Israel. And as I said, I'm trying to arrange an interview here in the near future with him. He's really one of the most articulate, biblically sound defenders of Israel that I know. Here's part of his interview. It's not going to be an hour long. It's only about a few minutes. So here we go. Dumasani Washington on JTV.
There's a civil war in the Trump administration. It's a Team Vance, Team Rubio, meaning there's a thought, I may have said this already, that if you are pro-Israel, you by default cannot be pro-America. If you are an American citizen who then wants a healthy, strong relationship between the U.S. and Israel, which would be me, just like a Tucker attacks Christian Zionists, He's attacking me. Right? If you want a strong relationship, then that by default means that you are not America first. This is what's going on, not in the media, not in the press, not in Al Jazeera, within the Trump administration. Within the administration, there's a jockeying for position. So some of what is happening, whether or not the vice president is being impacted by this, who knows, right? But what we do know from people on the inside is that if Oliver, and I know he's not American, but if Oliver were working there in the administration and he was outed as pro-Israel, he better watch his step. He might get his funding reduced. He might get moved to this corner office over here. This is what's actually happening right now. And this is for people who know.
Do you know who are the leading figures in this push?
I do, and I can't say more than that, because when it was being said to us, it was very. What I can say is this: that it is affecting everyone because people are walking on eggshells.
Wow.
Because you don't want to say the wrong thing, and wrong thing, ladies and gentlemen, means. If you say something like, for example, I'm just going to use an example. If you say something like, well, Judea and Samaria does belong to Israel, you better watch it. If you say the wrong thing like, well, Israel has, okay, let me go here. It was within a 24-hour turnaround. Our U.S. soldiers got killed in Syria about 24 hours after Israel killed a Hamas leader in, I don't know if it was in Gaza or somewhere else. The Trump administration issued a nastygram to the Netanyahu administration about wondering whether or not they violated the ceasefire. I was like going, really? What ceasefire? The ceasefire that was being called while Hamas was still trying to abduct IDF soldiers, right? So Israel gets a, hey, you better watch it. Syria gets a, it's not your fault, no problem. See, this is what we're talking about, right? So now when that becomes the thing, this is what, so when the person was telling us some of the inside things that were happening there, it made complete sense, right? Because I'm not an insider, right? But he told me, yeah, no, this you have to be careful, because if you say the wrong thing, you will be outed. And again, outed, ladies and gentlemen, not as anti-Israel or anti-American or communist, no, but as pro-Israel. What's happening on the right, and it's growing, ladies and gentlemen, is that if you are seen as a pro-Israel American, somehow you are compromised. And I cannot miss this opportunity to say some of that is the very propaganda coming from places like Qatar.
Wow.
This is why, the reason why I told the story, and again, the Qatar statement, people think I'm just saying stuff. Go back to ISGAP. I say it again, check it out. The amount of money that they're using, they're taking influencers and local politicians, city council members from San Diego. They take them. I know this because I was in San Diego earlier this year, and I know some of the people they took to Qatar, right? And sports figures. And why? Because they are airbrushing. They learn from the Soviet Union. What you do is that you just present this a certain way, and people will think about it a certain way. And my God, they have enough money to do it, right? $1 million here. William Bennett, the Secretary of Education under the Reagan administration, is now shilling for Qatar. Google it. They even have him on their payroll. What is it, $300,000 a month or 30 some, whatever it is. But they're paying him, and they even says in the article, he's actually trying to present to everybody else that Qatar's not so bad. That's how much money these people have, and this is whether or not you're going to sell your soul, right? So this is what's actually happening, and the pressure then to conform. There's no entity that's actually applying that pressure more on the Qatar. And I go back to the president. When the president stands there and then tells you that these are the good guys, right? No one is actually airbrushing Qatar more than President Donald Trump.
And by the way, I spent a fair amount of time with Dumasani when I was in Israel. I'm trying to think of anything that I disagreed with him on in all the time we spent together. And the answer is I didn't, because he sees what's going on. He sees the truth of what's going on, and he's not afraid to talk about it. I have utmost respect for him. So Syria continues to be a problem, as he said. This is Jonathan Spires' article on Friday in the Jerusalem Post. And then this Middle East Forum article, The Palmyra Betrayal, Why Washington Must Stop Subsidizing Syria's Islamist Infiltration. This is a big problem, and this is going to unfold in a very bad and nasty way. Now, one of the things that's going to be on the table is the MOU, the Memorandum of Understanding between the U.S. and Israel. we make arrangements to, without extra money during the war and everything, but essentially this was entered back in the Obama administration. I think it expires at the end of 2027. And we're to give them $3.8 billion a year. But what we do in that is we require them to spend like 80% of that money with U.S. contractors, defense contractors, so we get business out of that. So we give them the money. It's essentially a way, instead of giving the defense contractors money directly, we pass it through Israel. And Israel gets extra money, that's fine. But now the Netanyahu administration is doing something that I want you to watch the reaction of people to what Netanyahu is saying. Netanyahu says, okay, fine. The next memorandum of understanding, we want to phase out U.S. funding. Maybe start out with no U.S. funding of Israel. Because when we fund them, we say, oh, well, you guys, you can't do certain things with your technology and defense industry. Or if you develop something, you have to share it with us. And that's fine. We get benefit out of that. But Israel's saying, okay, fine. You know, it's causing you political problems, particularly on your right wing in America. All these people, oh, Israel runs everything. Israel gets, and I see people say, Israel's gotten trillions of dollars from the United States. It's a complete fabrication. Okay, it was like $38 billion over 10 years, which in our federal budget is a drop in the bucket, not even a drop in the bucket. Well, it's a drop in a very large bucket. So it's not that consequential. And people act like, well, if we didn't fund Israel, we could give health care to everybody. That's just not, you don't understand the way the world works when you say that. But that's all propaganda. That's what I see. I see it all day long on my social media feed, everywhere. And it's just complete nonsense. So now Israel's going to say, okay, fine. We don't want any of your funding, but then we don't want any of, we'll make our own decisions that are in the best interest of Israel. And those might have negative consequences for the United States. So you just wait, watch the discussions on this week. And if Israel says, okay, fine, we'll just go our own way, you're going to see people melting down about how terrible this is awful, we need to be able to control them. Wait a minute, I thought they controlled us. The whole thing is insane, and you're going to see insanity on display in many sectors, even on the right wing in America. They're going to go crazy that Israel might want to defend itself. Because what do they really want? They don't want Israel to exist. They think, if they have this idea that it would be this utopia, where, the grass is always green, other than a golf course, but the grass is always green, there are no weeds, the birds are chirping, the sky is blue. The only reason that it's not that way is because Israel exists. It has a very big end times component too. So I'm going to finish with two things. First, there's a big election coming up in Israel this year. If you think American politics is a mess, go read about Israeli politics. Look at all the different parties that they have. Some parties haven't met the threshold. You have to get a certain percentage, so you get 4 seats in the Knesset. So a couple, blue and white party doesn't make it. I think National Religious Zionism Party isn't meeting the threshold. But, look, it's a few months till election, so things can change. The 25 there on the right, that's Likud. So they're saying, well, Likud really has 50 in their coalition. Everybody else has 60. There are 10 kind of up in the air. It's a real, and it's, you see how closely divided everything is here in the United States. I mean, we have people who don't become UN ambassador because, well, we can't afford to maybe lose your seat in Congress, because then nothing will happen. Because, on the Republican side of the ledger, we have guys like Thomas Massey and Rand Paul, and you think they're really on board with a lot of things, so it's worse in Israel. I mean, it is incredibly divided. And then, I don't even know if I should say this, but I'm going to say it. So there's a link to this in the show notes, there's a link to a series of tweets that this guy, Isaac Choa, I don't know how, I apologize for mispronouncing his name. I see this all the time. The Talmud says, and then they pull a phrase out of the Talmud. The Talmud, my understanding, is if you wanted to study it to find out what it says, minimum 7 years. How many of you have spent, anybody who's tweeting this, has spent 7 years studying the Talmud? Now look, there are some statements there. Some of them are applied, say, to Jesus, but maybe they weren't talking about Jesus. There's some historical question as to whether it was even referencing Jesus. And it's an argument when, I don't know if this will sound very, it's almost like Jewish social media that's been written down. I mean, do you see, so if you go to X and you see all this garbage on X, does that mean that everybody's on X believes that garbage? No. But so then they say, well, it's in the Talmud, that doesn't mean that every Jew believes that or thinks that way or even thinks that it's authoritative on that issue. So Candace was talking the other day and she goes, I can't even use the language that she used. It's the F word. She was using it liberally, describing Ben Shapiro. She does not like Ben Shapiro. He fired her. And she's, well, that sounds sexist. So I'll just say that a sexist person would say she's a woman scorned, so she's kind of dangerous. But that's not me, I'm just saying what other people might be saying. But she pulls up this book called The Talmudic Jew. I read in the Talmud. She's never read it. First of all, it's in a foreign language that I don't think she's trained in. And this book is known to be an anti-Semitic trope. It's been proven false over and over again. And you see all these people, and I see Christians in it too, throwing this stuff from the Talmud around. And I'm saying is, before you do that, you better be sure that you know what you're talking about. And it's going to take you a long time to figure it out. So until you figure it out, keep your mouth shut. So look, I was a lawyer, and we argue things in our briefs, which kind of seems like a misnomer because lawyers don't do anything in a few words, so I don't know why they call it briefs, but I guess it's shorter than it would be if you didn't put a page limit on it. But the point is that legal arguments are all through our case books. I mean, go to a law library, there's case books all over the place, and if you pull one off, you read something because it's based on what people were claiming in a case, doesn't mean that everybody who's a lawyer believes that. That's why we have a legal system where people argue about that stuff. And that's similar to what the Talmud is. They're trying to argue about what applies and what does not apply. And look, there's some bad ideas in there, okay? There are bad ideas everywhere. Go read the congressional record. Go read the emails of people in Congress and that type of thing. So I'm just saying is, she does not know what she's talking about. And she continually cites anti-Jewish sources that are proven false over and over again. She has, in my estimation, no credibility on any single issue, even what day of the week it is or what time it is. I think she has destroyed her credibility that much. So I'll tell you, every time I see somebody post and they say, well, she did this and this is inconsistent, and the comments are, oh, she's wonderful, she's the greatest investigator ever, and she's bringing the receipts, and I'm like, and then people say, she's had like 25 different people or groups that have killed Charlie Kirk, and she just moves on to the next one when one gets debunked. It's an incredible thing, and yet I see Christian people on social media going, oh, she's so wonderful. She's such a good Christian girl. To me, she's become sort of a harbinger as to whether you have discernment or not. And if you want to make a negative comment, go ahead and try, and I'll block you. Because I believe in free speech, but not in my living room. Okay? So I don't come over to your house and yell at you. So that's fine. You have social media, you have plenty of outlets. How many different social media platforms there are? Have at it. I just don't want it messing up the comments on our YouTube channel, because we actually have people that want to make intelligent comments. So anyway, this is an incredible time to be alive, and I need to get, there is one thing I forgot. Good news. Good news. So this is Let the Stones Speak. It's published by the Armstrong Institute of Biblical Archaeology. They're pretty good. They do a lot of good work. They have an article this week. It was published in the Journal of Near Eastern Studies or something like that. And it talks about Sennacherib's palace in Nineveh. And if you've ever been to the British Museum in London, there are these massive rooms full of relief panels from Nineveh. The British, thank the Lord for the British. They gave us golf in the Nineveh panels, okay? And it's, and so they have these rooms full of these relief panels. And one of the guys that's prominent in these panels, because it was his palace, Sennacherib, in Nineveh, is Sennacherib and what he did. And one of the things he did was he invaded Israel, and he talks about how he kept Hezekiah like a bird in a cage and that type of thing. So they were examining one of the panels. Now, the panel's been destroyed. But before it was destroyed, they took very detailed photographs, drawings, whatever, of these panels. And one of these panels, whatever the slab is here, is like slab 28 or slab 26. What happened to the panel? Well, it was in the palace of Sennacherib in Nineveh. This guy, in 10 years, he built a his throne room in his palace was 167 feet by 60 feet. And they had these panels like 10 feet tall, all carved with these reliefs about what happened, the story, and they're historical treasure trove. Well, ISIS got into Nineveh and destroyed the panels. So people are looking at drawings and that type of thing. And this guy was examining it, and he believes that this is a panel about Jerusalem back at the time of Sennacherib when he invaded Israel. So it's very fascinating, and this may be confirmation of the Bible study. I mean, there's things that, remember Sennacherib's army, was it Hezekiah was the king? 180,000 were killed in one night by the angel of the Lord. Sennacherib doesn't really talk about that. It was sort of like, I went to Israel, I conquered all these cities, and then I came home. Kind of left out that little tidbit about the 180,000 of his soldiers being killed in one night by the angel of the Lord. So this may be a representation on this panel of Jerusalem at the time of Hezekiah. And there's I don't think I have that. You can go to Armstrong Institute for Biblical Archaeology website. They have a magazine that they publish. There's also a video out about this. You can look it up. It was on my social media this week. And very well done. Guy makes the case. And there's a sole person walking around in one of the pictures. And they said that could be a representation of Hezekiah. Point is this. It's one thing that struck me in Israel on my trips to Israel, particularly this time. It's always done it, but this time was different. When the temple was destroyed, Judaism lost a lot. They lost their sacrificial system and everything. And now we live at a time where the historical ties to all of that is being restored. I think this is prophetic. I'm not sure how it plays out exactly, but I think it's part of this whole end time scenario. And I think this is incredibly exciting times. You go to Israel, go down to the city of David. We went with Eli Shakron. Eli Shakron, back starting about 2010, started to uncover what is now known as Temple Zero. Having talked to Eli, he led the tour that we took that day. I believe that Temple Zero is the temple of Melchizedek. So go to Hebrews, Hebrews 7, where it talks about Melchizedek, a priest after the order of Melchizedek. This is stunning stuff that this is surfaced very, very recently to confirm the truth of the scripture and as an opportunity for us to teach about, okay, who was Melchizedek? Why was he important? And he was important. Abraham paid tithes to him. Don't usually pay tithes to in that particular context. It's very important stuff. So get the Biblical Armstrong Institute book or magazine and see the video. It's on YouTube. Very easy to find. It's a 2,700-year-old representation, it appears, of Jerusalem. Right there was in the stones of Nineveh. Crazy. So anyway, let's pray and we'll get at. We're a little bit early today, so I just want people to know I'm not ill. I'm not. I'm just done. Yeah. So let's leave. So incredibly exciting time to be alive, but pay attention this week to the Netanyahu-Trump meetings in Washington. I think they'll be very important, especially what's coming out of them. So let's pray. Lord, just pray, Lord, that your will be done in these meetings that are coming up between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu. Pray you'll give people wisdom for dealing with what can only be described as a very volatile situation. And pray you will open people's eyes and give them wisdom and understanding to see the things that are unfolding right in front of their eyes. Bless us this week, give us opportunities to share the gospel. In Jesus' name, amen.